Live from Studio 550, it's McGraw in the Morning on the Big 550 KTRS.
Elizabeth Crisp has been covering the legislative session down in Jefferson City. Our condolences, Elizabeth Crisp.
Well, last week was a long week, but it's over.
It is officially over. Started in January, went through Friday. What, Elizabeth, would you say they would say was the biggest piece of legislation that got through both houses?
I would say, just from talking to the leaders of the House and Senate, I think really right now, what they're looking to as one of the major successes of the session is they passed this income tax cut for individuals and businesses. It's kind of a lot of people compared it to what Kansas has been doing, and they kind of scaled it back a bit, so it's not exactly like Kansas's. But I think that that's really one of the pieces of legislation that leaders in both chambers have been particularly proud of this session, I think. Is
Governor Nixon planning on signing that, or is he going to veto it, or what are his thoughts? Do you know?
I suspect he will veto it.
Are there enough?
You're talking about when completely phased in, it's about $700 million hit to state revenues, and so I think that's a bit much for him to swallow on that front.
So, do they have the votes to override his veto?
Not quite. No.
All right, so we'll see there. What?
I think a lot of this, what happened in the session now, it's a lot of a waiting game. There was also the big gun legislation that they passed, which basically seeks to nullify federal gun laws by saying that guns are as states' rights issue. All gun regulations should be held within, the state, and that piece of legislation ended up being amended so many times, and there are so many different components to it. I think that's another one that we'll see the governor probably taking a closer look at, and there are so many different pieces to it that there might be something in there that he can get away with vetoing.
Right. Friday, it seemed like quite a lot of talk, but not a lot of last-minute bills got passed. A lot of things did not cross the goal line, including
right.
that tax credit, the historic tax credit bill. That sort of went down in defeat.
Right. And the tax credit, and also there was this proposal to put it to the voters whether the sales tax should be increased 1 cent to go into a fund to pay for transportation upgrades. Both of those didn't make it out of the Senate on Friday. There were senators who felt very strongly against both of them and held them up, said that they would, continue filibustering until 6. So that both of those were withdrawn and ultimately defeated.
It seemed like this year, Elizabeth Crisp, and you can probably speak to this better than anybody because you watched it firsthand, Republicans own both the House and the Senate, and they own veto-proof majorities, and it's fascinating to watch how little can actually get done, and yet they own both houses.
I think that it is very interesting how that worked. I think there's always been a bit of a discord between the House and Senate, and this year I think we really saw that kind of magnified. That it's not even between leadership. I think Senator Dempsey and House Speaker Tim Jones, they actually appear to get along and be on the same page a lot. But the Senate is it's just a unique body, and that you can have one or two senators who disagree with something, and ultimately they can lead to its defeat. And so it has been interesting to see reaching historic majorities of Republicans, but when you get a group so large, obviously you're going to have different personalities, and we really saw what that looks like this session. That people just couldn't come to the same page on a lot of things.
Are they talking about a special session?
There's really not been much serious talk of a special session. And I think from the governor and the legislative leadership, they all kind of seem to take the perspective of, if we don't feel like it's going to be productive, then what's the point? And I don't think that there's much room to reach any sort of middle ground on these issues that are left out there.
That is Elizabeth Crisp. Elizabeth, get some sleep. Great work as always, and we'll talk to you down the road.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Elizabeth Crisp with us, St. Louis Post-Dispatch reporter covering Jefferson City for us. And, boy, talk about covering a three-ring circus. That's what she had to do for the last 5 months. Elizabeth Crisp, St. Louis Post-Dispatch reporter. My favorite bill they passed, they're going to send it to the voters on whether or not Missourians have a right to farm, because it seems like that's being infringed upon.